Are you looking for out of the box ideas and strategies to find killer cash flow?
Our guest today used a seller financing strategy and a super small investment of money to begin his real estate business that's now generating crazy cash flow.
I'm Ashley Kerr.
And I'm Tony J. Robinson, and welcome to the Real Estate Rookie Podcast. And I'm super excited to welcome to the show, Manny. Manny, what's up, brother? How you doing, man?
Hi, Tony. Hi, Ashley. Thank you for having me. It feels very surreal to be here. So happy to be on the show, and I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, well, we're excited to kind of dig into your story, Manny. So can you give us a snapshot of your life before real estate investing and kind of what motivated you to actually want to start investing?
I didn't really know anything about finance or real estate till after I got out of the Army. Before then, I didn't really have, I guess, a pathway, if you will. A lot of people around me were kind of like skating by almost and didn't really feel like they had a plan. And I was kind of the same, to be honest. So I joined the Army a little bit later when I was like 24. And that's kind of what catapulted me into this real estate career, pretty much by complete accident too. So
How did that accident occur? What was the thing that kind of made that like light bulb click, like, I need to do this?
Yeah, so I was in the Army from 2018 to 2022. While I was in the Army, I was a medic, right? So I would be out a lot, like on mission and stuff. And a lot of the time as medics, we don't really do much unless somebody gets hurt. So I would have a lot of downtime for what it's worth. And in that downtime, I would read as many books I could about business, about real estate, about finance. Obviously, I'd listen to BiggerPockets podcast too, to try to get like my business acumen up, if you will. I got hurt in 2021 pretty badly. To the point where I couldn't walk for like a year and a half. So yeah, I got discharged, and when I got discharged, I was like, wow, I have nothing lined up because my plan was to stay in the Army for at least a little bit longer. And I had a 1-year-old son, and I was married to, my wife didn't have a job. So I thought, what do I do? I had like maybe around 12K to my name. And I scraped that together. As I was getting out, I went and bought my first home. It was a starter home, single family home, built in 2021. I used that 12 grand to cover the closing costs. Luckily, I got to use the VA loan, so I didn't have to pay anything down up front. And that's kind of what got me into the real estate game. Once I got that house, so I stayed in there for a year. There's a clause within the VA loan where you have to live there for a year before you can do it like any rental activities. So stayed there for a year, got back on my feet, started to be more forward looking, and then I bought my second house with that same VA loan. So you can actually use it more than once. There's an allotment to it. It kind of depends on where you live, I think. That being said, after I bought that second house, I was like, okay, I'm going to rent this first one out now.
First, man, I think, from Ashley and I both, just like, thank you for your service, right? I mean, for you to go in, and you said you couldn't walk for a year and a half, right? It had to be something big happened, man. So thank you for your service there. But you took what you did in the military and used that as a foundation to start building your real estate portfolio. So the first property, did you buy it with the intention of it eventually becoming a rental, or was it like, hey, I just want to get my family situated somewhere?
So when I was still in the military, I started reading about investing, right? And I saw an overwhelming trend, how wealthy real estate can make you. So to your point, yes, I wanted to buy it with the intent to rent it out, but I had no experience, so I wasn't really too sure what I was doing yet. And I kind of just took it as like, okay, I have this short timeline to figure things out. So I'm just going to try to do this as quickly as I can and try to be as efficient as I can with it. So to your point, yes, I did have the intent to rent it out. And it ended up working out pretty well. That house the first one, I bought for $219,499. The interest rate was, I think it was 3.125%. So my payment was really cheap. It was like $1,000. And when I was renting it out, I rented it out for $1,695. So it was cash flowing like 695 for the first, probably, I would say the first like maybe 18 months. After that, the renters left. So I had a really tough time trying to find other renters, and it sat vacant from, I think, May to, I want to say like the end of the year, like December. So I lost a good amount of money on that, like close to almost 10,000. Trying to rent it out. The downside was, so that neighborhood has an HOA, and you can't do like STRs or anything like that. So, and I didn't know that at the time, because again, I'm still kind of trying to figure things out. So I didn't really have too many strategies other than trying to find a long-term renter. And looking back, I probably should have lowered the rent, but I didn't really think too much of it at the time. I have somebody in there now. So I got them in there this past December. But it was definitely a learning experience to have to eat those costs for as long as I did.
Manny, when you decided to rent this property out, what were the steps you took to actually get it rent ready as a rookie investor, having your first tenant come in? Kind of explain that transition of this is your primary home and now getting it ready for tenants and actually finding tenants and then leasing it out.
Yeah, definitely. So when I bought my second house, I met a realtor that was a longtime friend of my dad's. So that realtor that sold me the second house was also a property manager. And he was like, hey, you have this other house. Let me help you get it rent ready. He's like, and I'll manage it for you too, so you can be completely hands off. I was like, I'll do it. I was like, but I want you to give me a really good deal to be my property manager, and I'll keep buying houses from you exclusively within San Antonio. And he took that deal. So he helped me get everything ready for the first house. Like he has like the Texas real estate lease, the Texas Realtors real estate lease. So like he got all that set up. He screened the tenants for me. He also did like the background checks, like all of that stuff, and then found them. So it made everything pretty seamless.
Rookie investors listening, do you recommend that they take this same route, that they find somebody to manage their first rental property?
I guess I think it kind of depends. With me, I don't know how much, to be honest, I would have trusted him right away if he wasn't friends with my dad. Just because I've gotten burned in the past with other business deals. But that being said, I think maybe trust your gut, I think is a good way to look at it when you're meeting people and doing business with them. If you know like completely nothing, it definitely helps. I'll say that much. Because again, like I didn't really know too much of what I was doing, and he got me set up with like, hey, you need renter's insurance. Hey, this tenant has to have like a history of employment. This tenant needs to have like a decent credit check or credit score. And he would tell me like for example, like if somebody didn't have a very high credit score, he would say, well, then I look at like, do they have like, what kind of debt do they have? Like, do they have broken leases, or is it just like medical debt? Because then, you know, people don't intentionally not pay their medical bills if they're not able to. So like kind of things like that, little nuances, it helped to like really open my eyes to see like, okay, like this is a very people-based business. And there's more to it than just like, okay, this house is open, you know, pay me rent for it, and, you know, so on and so forth. So to your point, I do recommend it if they're able to swing it, but I also recommend being very selective on who you work with.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick ad break. But first, if you're a rookie investor and you're craving some accountability, then make sure you check out the Momentum Virtual Summit. You'll get to attend 8 virtual sessions that cover different real estate investing topics that are super relevant to investing in today's market. Now, the most important part, though, is that you will get to be involved in an accountability group with like-minded rookie investors just like yourself. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk to Manny about his seller finance deal that created hyper cash flow for him. With that, we'll be right back. All right, let's get back into the show with Manny, guys. So, Manny, I want to get into this kind of cool seller finance deal that you did. But before I do, just one last question, because you mentioned before the break that you probably lost close to $10,000 on that first rental deal. And I can feel your pain, brother, because the second real estate deal that I did, I think we ended up losing like close to $30,000 between lost rental revenue having to cover the mortgage. And then we also had to do some repairs, things that came up. So I know you mentioned that potentially dropping the rent price was one thing, but I guess how did you land on that rent price? And I guess what stopped you from dropping if you felt maybe that was the solution?
I got really used to getting that rental amount because it covered my costs for my property manager. It covered my costs for the maintenance. And then like I was able to keep some for myself too. I did end up dropping that rent. I dropped it $100 for what it's worth. And once I did that, I was able to find tenants. So it's sat vacant for so long, like I said, right, from May to December.
I know you knocked out a couple of house hacks, right? And that's kind of how you got your feet wet as a real estate investor. But I know you also kind of fell into a bit of a glamping business as well. So maybe walk us through, how was that transition? I guess just what was the initial story behind this idea to get into the world of glamping?
Yeah, so I got into it by complete accident. After I bought that second house, that same guy that is friends with my dad, and that's my property manager, and he said, what do you think about tiny houses? And I was like, I think they're super cool. I was like, I would love to, maybe get into them one day. And he was like, well, I have one for you here right now. And he's like, do you want it? And I was like, can I go see it? And he was like, yeah. So I went over there to go look at it. And it's an awesome tiny house that he built. Basically like one of those shell homes, like modular almost, but the whole inside is outfitted. It has like a kitchen, bathroom, and one bedroom, and then a living room. It's around 384 square feet, I think, off the top of my head.
So does it sit on a trailer that you can move it, or?
This is on top of cinder blocks. So when I went there and looked at it, I was like, wow, I really want this. And then the plumber was like, okay, well, it's going to be like 50 grand. And I was like, well, that's great, but I don't have 50 grand. So he ended up saying like, if you really want it, I'll sell it to you like seller finance. And I was like, that's great. I was like, but I don't even have land to put this thing on. So I made a deal with him and I said, hey, I'll do the seller finance deal, but let me lease the land. So like, I can at least, like get this thing going and get on my feet. So
that's awesome. What a creative.
Yeah, I got lucky. So first of all, San Antonio, right? There's a lot of land outside of that city. They call it the Texas Hill Country. So that plumber lived out in that area and he had a good amount of land himself. He had his own house that sat on the land and then the tiny house down the way from his house. And the utilities were connected to his house. So it fed off of his house and it had like its own little plot and it was separated by a fence. So it was really nice. Like, I think very Instagrammable. I ended up doing a seller finance deal with him. I got it for $50,000. He did me a 5% interest rate. And I think I gave him 20,000 down, that I had saved. And then the rest he had financed to me. After that, I put it on Airbnb, and it took off pretty well. But the downside was like, he didn't like the guests that were coming and the guests weren't really bothering him. I think he was just maybe like an old school guy and he wanted like his peace. So he was like, hey, you have like 6 months for this land lease. He's like, and then after that, like you're like, you got to get out and find somewhere else. And during that time, so it was still kind of the beginning of when I got out of the Army, right? So I had just had surgery on one of my hips. I had surgery on both of my hips, but I had surgery on one side during this time. So like I was pretty like immobile, if you will. So on top of like trying to run this business and trying to find land, I was also like dealing with like my health too, right? So I was working with my dad's friend again, and I was like, hey, I need some land now. Help me out. So he found me land around 30 minutes outside of San Antonio, in this area called Medina Lake. The good thing is that this land has no HOA, and it has no deed restrictions. So the people out there kind of just do whatever they want to their land, if you will. And I was able to buy that land with a veteran land board loan. So there's a company, I think it's only in Texas. I might be wrong. But that veteran land board gave me a loan to buy the land.
We have never heard of this before, have we, Tony?
No, I've never heard of that. And this is separate from the VA loan to purchase an actual property. It's literally just for land purchase.
Yes, exactly.
It's a veteran land board, like BOARD.
Yeah, I think they go by VLB.
Okay. I just Googled it and it does look like it's very specific to Texas.
I was talking with my other friends that are veterans, and they're the ones that told me about this. It's not like the VA loan, so it's not zero down. The land itself was around $65,000. I think that interest rate at the time was around 5%. And I don't remember exactly the percentage that I paid down, but it was around, I think it was around $5 to $6 grand that I paid down to get the land. It's like a 3-minute walk from Medina Lake. The only downside is the lake is really dry right now. So I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous to do that because I was like, wow, nobody's gonna want to come out here because there's no lake. But that hasn't really been the case.
And Manny, so what was it about that specific piece of land that made you feel like it would be a good location? Like, did you do research on other Airbnbs? Were there other tiny homes? Like, I know you said there's a lake, but was there anything else that kind of drew you into it?
To your point, I looked on AirDNA and I looked at a lot of counties around San Antonio, and the place that I picked was number 2 out of 5, I think. Number 1 at the time was Canyon Lake, which I think that lake is drying up as well. And then Medina Lake, which is where I was at. And I think it was Bandera, the town.
Yeah, a few other lakes that maybe were in the same area.
Right. But so AirDNA's data showed me that the location I picked was number 2. So I was like, okay, like maybe I can do something with this. When I brought the home over there, it only had a water meter. So it didn't have electricity. Utilities weren't, so it got dropped off there on cinder blocks. And then I'm like, okay, I need to start figuring out like what I need to do. So I called the electrical company. They said like, hey, we'll come install this pole. And they said we can do underground electric or above ground. We chose, I believe, underground.
What was the basis for that reasoning? Like, why did you choose that one compared to the other one?
My dad and his realtor friend, they know a bunch of tradesmen. And they have a really good friend that they've known for like 30 years. It's an electrician. So it was his recommendation, I think, because he said it would be less maintenance for having the wire into the ground. I don't know too much about electrical outlets and electrical like setup, to be honest. But I just took his word for it.
Yeah, pretty much anyone who does a new build here does underground electric too. Yeah.
What was the cost for that, Manny? What did it cost to have that electrical run?
So electrical company itself charged me like $1,500, and then the electrician that we hired charged me another $1,500. So it was around $3 grand out the door. And he set everything up himself, and that included the materials too for whatever else was needed.
It's actually not too bad, because I've a lot of times it's utility runs that are somewhat the most expensive part. We had Garrett Brown, who's one of the short-term rental contributors for BiggerPockets. He had a glamping unit that he built out as well, and if I recall, his cost to install his utilities was significantly more expensive. So it sounds like you kind of caught a break with the water and with the electrical. So what was your next step then, Manny, after getting the electrical installed?
Yeah, so once the electrical was installed, I was like, okay, I have a water meter, I have electricity. Oh wait, I need plumbing. So I was like, okay, let me figure this part out. So I called around some septic companies, and they were all telling me like, this is going to cost a lot because the land that you bought has a lot of rock, which I didn't know about. I guess hindsight is 2020, right? So to answer your question, the next step was to get an aerobic septic tank, and my property manager gave me really good advice. He was like, don't skimp on the septic tank. He's like, get like the top of the line that you can. He's like, because if you want to build more tiny houses out here, they can all be connected over to it. So the aerobic septic tank was $18,000. I didn't have that money up front, so I used a 0% interest credit card to fund it. which I guess in hindsight probably wasn't the best idea because I had to get more creative with that as well. Once I got it installed, it came with the service agreement. So they service it every 6 months. They'll go out there and look at the tank and do all that stuff. I started to think like, maybe I'm too in over my head and like, I don't know what I'm doing. And like, I started questioning myself and all these things. It was just slowly but surely that it happened. I would say took around 3 to 4 months for it to be off of Airbnb. I used the same Airbnb listing from the first location. I reached out to Airbnb. I don't know if things have changed since then, but I reached out to them at the time and I said, hey, can I still use this same listing? Because I already had reviews for it.
But because the property address was changing, you probably had to have them go in the back end and change it then.
Right. That's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
I had to show them proof, like different things, like that I bought this land, and I explained to them like the agreement that I had, and I was like, I still want to keep this listing, but I need time to do the construction. I need time to get everything set up. So yeah, it was tough. It wasn't anything but easy. My wife kind of tells me that she's like, you just like look at like the end of how you want to get to things and not like everything in between. So it was really tough to get there, but once I got it set up, it seemed like things have worked out. So,
well, tell us about some of the amenities or different features you added that kind of make your glamping site stand out from other ones.
Like I was saying before, when the lake dried up, I was like, wow, like now the lake's dry, I'm done with this, and now I don't know how to get people out here. So if you go and look on the site's Instagram, like I said, everything, it looks like a shell, right? Like there wasn't anything. So I started looking around at other glamping sites just to see like what they were doing. So I added an 8-foot privacy fence around the tiny house. I call it a casita in Texas. A lot of people call it casitas. So I added an 8-foot fence around it. I added a stock tank pool that doubles as a hot tub too. So it's got like a little propane tank attachment, and it's attached to the tiny house. So in the summer, it's really cool. It's got I don't know the exact material, but it's not metal inside. It's some sort of like plastic maybe. So when it gets really hot outside, the metal doesn't heat up. It's just the plastic coating keeps it separate, right? So and then in the winter, it doubles as a hot tub, so you can flick the propane tank on, and the system shoots out kind of like a heater, and then will heat the water up for you. And it's got like a little motor attached to it. I didn't build it. I hired a company to. And if you've ever seen a stock tank pool, it's kind of like a makeshift pool. It's not the biggest thing, but man, that thing is so tough to clean. So
ours are more like just kind of soaking tubs. And we actually had to drill a hole in them about like 1.5 feet above the base. Otherwise, like the permitting got a lot more complicated and became like a real pool, and they made us jump through all these other hoops. So ours is really just like, hey, you can lay in it, kind of soak it in a little bit, but then we empty it and the guests refill if they want to use it. So we have some guests who don't even use it. And that way we don't have to worry about cleaning it, for every single guest once it's done.
That's really smart. I might actually take that idea.
Lessons learned, as we started to scale up. What other amenities have you added to the property?
It has like lightning fast Wi-Fi as well. So there's a TV in there with streaming services. I have like a little game device in there too as well. The inside's furnished with like a futon. It's got my wife decorated it. So like I told her like go wild, because I don't know anything about decorating. I'm gonna be honest. So she went and got all these different things from different places. It has a stove in it as well, the shower too. Oh, it has a washer and dryer in it as well. So I added a washer and dryer into where the bedroom is.
Yeah, that's a good amount for 380 some odd square feet. I like that, man. So let me ask, man, I mean, you put a lot of time and effort and energy into getting the listing up and running. I guess 2 questions. How long did it take from the moment that, you moved it from the original location to the new location? How much time did it take to get it live? And then once you've launched it, what kind of revenues have you seen from this investment?
Yeah, so construction and everything like that took around 3 months. So it was 3 months of no revenue and still having to, pay the carrying costs, if you will. The first year that it was live, it did almost 8,000. That was between Airbnb, Glamp Hub, and Hip Camp. And I think I had like 1 or 2 bookings on Verbo maybe. So it did okay. Since then, I I actually put it on Furnish Finder just to see what would happen, and I had a solar company reach out to me. That I guess they have students in that area that are training for whatever it is they do, and they said, hey, we need like a midterm rental. Your place is the closest for what we need, and it has everything that we need. So I did a deal with them. They just moved in January 11th, and their move out date is May 11th, and they're paying $11.95 a month. Really, the only costs to me are the land, the insurance, and then the utilities, because I'm carrying those too. They pay for the trash themselves. So I would say like maybe $400 to $500 for my costs. So it's pretty close to almost 700 cash flow, I think, around there. When I first put it on Airbnb, somebody actually trashed it.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. If you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel at Real Estate Rookie, and we'll be right back with Manny. Okay, welcome back from our break. We are here with Manny, who has been giving us insight on how to run a glamping business, along with all of his experiences with having tenants and managing. So Manny, you mentioned that you might have had a tenant that trashed your property, but actually was a guest because it was a short-term rental, right?
Yeah, that's right. They were actually, I think, our first guests at the casita, right, in the new location. So I went as much like all out as I could to try to make it really nice and pretty and everything. And these people came in, and it was only supposed to be 2 guests. I have a Ring camera on the front door, but I think they snuck extra people in maybe through the side or something like that, or maybe even under the camera. The reason how I know is my cleaners went out there at like 7 a.m. They were supposed to be out there at like 11, but they got the time wrong. And when they went out there, there was like, I think like 4 or 5 cars there. I'm like, wait a minute, like why are all these cars here? There's only supposed to be 2 people. So they went there and saw, and then I messaged them, and they were like, oh, like they made up some excuse or something. But after they left, the place was completely trashed. They had like some sort of party there or something.
And this is, what did you say, 396 square feet? And
yeah, something like that. So they had all these people in there. There was all kinds of stuff. Like they like threw up in there. They like all my dishes were like everywhere, food everywhere, and like there was even like some like alleged like blood in there too. I don't know what from. Like all kinds of weird stuff, and like I had to get with Airbnb and like show them pictures, and like they tampered with my my locks on my my keypad locks, so they like pulled the batteries out, and like they did all kinds of crazy stuff. And I'm just like, why? Like I worked so hard to do this.
yeah, Manny, how did this get resolved with Airbnb? What was kind of the outcome from it?
Yeah, so I ended up charging them, I think like $400 or $500 for everything, because I had to replace so many things. There were stains, there was all kinds of stuff. It was a huge mess. It took my cleaners like a long time. And the funny thing is, so my cleaners live in the neighborhood. So like my guy texted me, and he was like, buddy, he's like, you're gonna want to see this. And he like sent me all these pictures, and I'm like, oh my God, like you know, another problem.
It's unfortunate, right, that happens from time to time. But Manny, I mean, I don't know if you've seen this in your portfolio, but for us on the short-term side, it's like there is going to be those guests that make a mess, that don't clean up after themselves, that cause the headache. But I would say vast majority of people who stay at our Airbnbs are usually pretty respectful, nice, and you know that they leave the place the same way that they found it. Would you Would you say you've seen the same for yours as well?
Yes, 100%. I haven't had any issues since them.
There you go. There you go. That's usually how it goes, man. It's how it's supposed to be, man. Well, dude, it sounds like your hard work has paid off, man. I mean, you did the work to secure the property itself, seller finance, and you went out and got the land, and you did all the work to make it stand out. I guess what's next for you in your glamping business? Like, are you looking at any ways to increase revenue, or just what's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I found out with having the land and the tiny house, I learned that if I build more, that the first tiny house, the casita, will absorb the cost of most things, right? Like the electricity and the water, and then the land payment, insurance, all that stuff. So after that, it's almost like pretty much profit, except for maybe like some of the utilities will go up, right? And then the cleaners. So to your point, I went to Phoenix, Arizona in October, before I left here to Tokyo, and I met this team of people. It was an older man and a lady. They had two tiny houses, and you can see them on our Instagram. So they're very, very flashy. It's an orange one and a blue one. I ended up buying the orange one, but then I had to figure out, like, okay, now I have to ship it from from Phoenix to Texas. That was a whole other thing. The guy that shipped it ended up breaking it. So I got this one seller financed as well, by the way. This one was a lot less down. I think maybe like a couple thousand, if that. Price for that one was only 23,000. The size is like maybe right under 200 square feet, but it's very like nicely decorated. And they're painted. So they have like a Arizona desert skyline on it. The lady that I met commissioned a local artist to paint the entire unit. It's like a container home kind of. But it's super flashy. Like if you look at it, there's a blue one and a red one, and they just stand out, right? So I went and bought that one. I had it shipped from Phoenix to Texas. The guy that shipped it broke the floor, so because I guess he didn't know what he was doing. So that's something I'm dealing with right now. I haven't had that one listed yet. I have to get the utilities connected for that, which I'm going to use the same electrician. Luckily, I already have the septic, so I can connect that one as well, and then connect it to the water. But I want to do the same thing, right? Get the spirit of glamping going there, and have it set up and have it rented out. I will say one thing that I think that's really saved us is there's a store down the street from there that sells deer corn. So every time I would go out there, I would buy deer corn, and I would throw it out. So now every time people go, I think the deer are conditioned, and it's not just like one or two, it's like 20. Like there's a ton of them. They go out there, and like people want to take like videos of them and like, you know, pictures of them. And then to the left of that is a really nice scenic view. So I think people are starting to get the experience of like, okay, like wake up in the morning, have coffee, see the scenic view, and then see all the deer out there as well. It's pretty peaceful. That orange one, I expect construction to have probably be done sometime next month. There's been a lot of freezes going on in the area, so it's kind of delayed a little bit.
With these properties that you've been able to put together, you're managing them from Tokyo. So I guess kind of my last question here as we wrap up is, how many hours a week are you actually spending now that you've built your team on these properties, you know, overseeing them, doing the asset management? How many hours per week?
That's a good question. So I think it kind of varies depending on what's needed to be done. Before I left, I built the team out, right? So I have one property manager for the tiny houses, and then I have my other property manager for the single family homes. And, you know, it's funny, I got the times mixed up yesterday, and I showed up to this meeting at 5 a.m. yesterday, and I was like, wait, today's not the day. But the funny thing is that right after that happened, I got a hit on Airbnb for my other single family home, the second one that I bought. and somebody rented it out for midterm for 33 days. And it took me maybe 30 minutes to an hour of work to get like the messages sent, the short-term or the midterm lease signed, like things like that.
That is really awesome. Like to think that you were able to move across the world to manage your properties. Well, Manny, where can other people reach out to you, find more information about you, and talk more real estate with you?
Yeah, of course, of course. I usually spend time on Instagram mostly. For my personal account, it's going to be built by, and then my last name, Reyna. So built by Reyna. And then my glamping Instagram is just Get Casita. That one is one that I'm probably more active on, but happy to chat with anybody that wants to talk. Maybe they can learn lessons that I had to learn the hard way so they don't have to go through them.
Well, Manny, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Thank you again for your service. And we really appreciate the value you've been able to bring to our rookie investors. And again, so awesome that you're living in Tokyo, living out your dream life. Just went to Disneyland last week with your son, all while managing your properties in the States. So congratulations on your success.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Ashley and he's Tony, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of the Real Estate Rookie Podcast.